it says preparing to live stream. I think once it switches to the next thing, setting up your YouTube live, I believe means that we are already live on YouTube.
It says,
and we look forward to streaming this, which you're doing, and you probably, if you ever watch this, will hear me talking right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, can you see me on the screen at home? Do you see me?
Yes.
Do you see me? Okay, so it's working. It's always a good sign when things are working, and from time to time, the camera moves on its own. I have no control over the camera, ladies and gentlemen. I have very little control in life over many things, and one of the things I have no control over is this particular camera. If somebody tells me how to try to control the camera, I'm sure there is a way I could learn how to control the camera, but can't be bothered. Dovbeck, can you do me a favor, please, and allow the people in that are outside? Thank you very much. Okay, fabulous. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another lesson of JLI. And this tonight is the Kabbalah of Meaning, Lesson 4. Welcome. Kabbalah of Meaning, Lesson 4. Welcome to the people at home and welcome to the people in the room. And we're having a fabulous time. So let's quickly summarize where we're up to right now. In Lesson 1 of the class, we learned about the importance of growth. And we learned the importance of doing good deeds for other people and of relationships and about being productive. That was the lesson 1. In lesson 2 of this course, we spoke about the importance of living with purpose. That a meaningful life is a purpose-driven life, a life where we have purpose that motivates everything we do, and the importance of finding our own unique individual purpose. That was the theme of lesson 2. In lesson 3, we addressed, okay, well, what is our purpose? And we spoke about the purpose of humanity as a whole, which is to bring more spirituality and meaning into all areas of our lives, including the more mundane areas of life. That was lesson 3. And for those of you that missed any of the lessons, as discussed previously, please send me a message, and I will send you a video of the recorded class that you'll be able to watch it at home. But it's okay, because the lessons are not, while the lessons do flow one from another, each lesson can be studied as a standalone lesson. And tonight's lesson is a unique lesson. Tonight's lesson focuses on the power of time. It could also be called the Kabbalah of time, tonight's class. So let's read the introduction to the lesson as it can be found in our books on page 97 in our text. Meaning in the rhythms of time. As time flies by, is it just more of the same? Discover the rich texture of Jewish time and how attuning ourselves to each moment's message enables profound spiritual purpose. So let's get straight to it, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm going to do is share screen and bring up the PowerPoint on the screen. So the Kabbalah of Meaning, let's get this to work. Lesson 4, Meaning in the Rhythms of Time. And what we're going to learn today is that the Jewish calendar is not random, but instead it attunes us to the spiritual pulse of time. How every moment is pregnant with incredible potential. And it's our capacity as human beings to reveal that and to live with that in the most unbelievable ways. So let's start off by talking about Plymouth Rock. Has anyone here been to Plymouth Rock? I've been to Plymouth Rock once. Okay, and they told me when I went there that there's a rock, and they say, this is Plymouth Rock, we think, but it might be another place. It's not 100% sure that it's the right place, but they think this is Plymouth Rock. It's certainly the designated Plymouth Rock. But for the purpose of today's class, we're going to assume it is the right Plymouth Rock, okay? And that is the place we know. So let's start with an exercise. Page 100 in our books says, imagine you're walking with a child in Massachusetts, and you come across a sign that reads, Plymouth Rock, landing place of the Pilgrims, 1620. The child turns to you and asks, why did the Mayflower land here, of all places? What would you say? Very good answer. It had to land somewhere, right? It had to land somewhere. This is just as good a place as anywhere else. They came up the shore, they saw a spot, they figured the boat could get in over there, and they went there. No one planned it, no one anything, but it happened, right? So, is there any intrinsic importance to Plymouth Rock as a place? Or is it that humans assigned value to it because it happened to have had an incident once that turned out to be significant, if indeed that's the place where the boat lands, right? If indeed that's where the boat landed. So obviously it's assigned value. But now let's talk about Mount Wilson in California. Is that correct? I believe so.
Never heard of it.
You never heard of it. So this morning in class, we had someone who'd been there. Now, let's talk about Mount Wilson. Mount Wilson is a very famous mountain in California because on one of the most powerful telescopes in the world was established in the observatory in 1904. Today we have the Hubble telescope. Before we had the Hubble telescope, we had this incredibly important telescope on Mount Wilson in California. So, page 101. Now imagine you're walking with the same child in California and came upon a sign that says, "Welcome to historic Mount Wilson Observatory." This time the child asks, why did they build the observatory here? How would you answer?
Probably had a good view of, it was high and had a good view of what they wanted to see.
Very good. You would say it's a mountain. It's very high up. The skies over there happen to be very, very clear. And therefore, it's an excellent place to put an observatory. In other words, it's not random. This place was chosen very deliberately. Plymouth Rock, it happened to be. They had to land somewhere, right? They had to. Mount Wilson was very carefully chosen strategically and intentionally for its purpose. Okay, next exercise. Page 102, we're making a point, ladies and gentlemen, between some things that are, well, we're going to learn, and we've learned already in this class. I think we spoke about it in lesson 3, and we're going to speak about it certainly more in lesson 5. Things aren't random. Nothing's random. But one might think that Plymouth Rock happened randomly, right? It could have been anywhere. But Mount Wilson is very deliberate, correct? Let's look at page 102. Imagine you read in the newspaper that Dr. David Baker has been awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. You also read that Ivy, a Washington, D.C. resident, received a free Metro Rail card and a $500 gift card for being the 1 millionth passenger at Dulles Airport. If a child asked you why Dr. Baker got the Nobel Prize, what would you say? And if they asked why Ivy received the prize at the airport, what would you respond? Which one is more deliberate and intentional, and which one's more random? The Nobel Prize. Okay. So, in other words, the fact that Ivy was an important passenger is because somebody decided that the millionth passenger would be important. And that she was the millionth passenger who was actually counting, right? But the Nobel Prize, the person probably earned it and did something very deliberate and was intentional, and it was chosen. So we see that some things are assigned value. We say these things are important because they have an assigned value. And some things appear random. Some things, well, those are the things that appear random. And then some things have an intrinsic value. Let me ask you another question, ladies and gentlemen. Last Thursday was Thanksgiving, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Last Thursday was Thanksgiving. Why is the 4th Thursday in November Thanksgiving?
It's
It is.
So the answer, and by the way, it wasn't always Thanksgiving. They chose it. It's a date that was chosen. Let's go to a thing over here. I'm going to share my screen again. Share. Wait, watch this. Well, we're going to see how did here we go, Google Chrome. How did the how was the date of Thanksgiving, excuse my spelling, chosen? Typing. So the date of Thanksgiving was chosen after a series of proclamations and a 1939 controversy over the shopping season. Did you know this?
No.
President Lincoln set the last Thursday in November as the national holiday in 1863. It was during the Civil War. There was a tradition that went way back long before Lincoln to have Thanksgiving, ever since the Pilgrims. It does go back all the way to the Pilgrims, celebrating a successful first year at Plymouth Rock. And people celebrated it, but it wasn't a national holiday. During the Civil War, Lincoln realized there's a room for more gratitude in America and a national holiday and all the values and all the things. So he made it Thanksgiving. President Lincoln set the last Thursday in November as the national holiday in 1863. But in 1939, President Roosevelt moved it to the second to last Thursday to give retailers more time to sell before Christmas. This caused public confusion. And in 1941, Congress passed a law officially fixing Thanksgiving as the fourth Thursday of November. Occasionally, it happened a few years back, there are 5 Thursdays in November, and then it will still be the fourth Thursday in November. Remember that? But it's kind of random. It didn't have to be a Thursday in November. Thursday is a good day for a public holiday also because it gives you a long weekend. It creates Black Friday, good sales, all these things good for retail. So Thursday is how it became Thanksgiving. So so is it an inherent, intrinsic day of Thanksgiving, or is it an assigned day for Thanksgiving? It is an assigned day for Thanksgiving. Now, what we're going to learn today is that in the Jewish tradition, can you see my PowerPoint that says assigned value and intrinsic value at home?
No, we still see Google.
You still see it in Google. So let me switch it to try to get you share. What's going on here? Let's go share. PowerPoint. Okay, I thought I could do it differently. There we go.
That's good.
When it comes to holidays, in America in general, when it comes to time, we think of time, it's a utilitarian method for passing and marking days on a calendar. Is a Wednesday inherently different to a Tuesday or a Thursday? Not really in America. But in Jewish tradition, the mystics teach, the Kabbalists are well aware that every day has a very unique, powerful, special energy, and that no 2 days are alike. And learning to read the rhythms of the spiritual pulse of the universe can teach us a tremendous amount about how to live a more meaningful life. By the way, this course is called The Kabbalah of Meaning. There's a wonderful book that was written by a Chabad rabbi, Rabbi Simon Jacobson, called Towards a Meaningful Life. If you've never read that book, I highly recommend it. It came out in about 1995 or 1996, so it's not such a new book, but it's a wonderful book called Towards a Meaningful Life, and I highly recommend it for anyone who wants to read it. That's right. Viktor Frankl famously wrote about man's search for meaning. This book is called Towards a Meaningful Life, and it's a very nice book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it, Towards a Meaningful Life. I remember reading that once, and thinking to myself, I'm looking for the sequel towards a functional life. Meaning I could just use a little bit more, but no, thank God. Baruch Hashem, life is very functional and wonderful and meaningful and splendid and marvelous and good too, thank God. But so why did I mention that? I don't remember. Doesn't matter. I know why, because I said meaningful, so it reminded me of that. Okay, so Kabbalah teaches that every moment of the day, every day of the week, every day of the year, every week of the year, every month of the year has its own unique energies. And we can discover today in this class, we're going to give you the basic tools. Believe it or not, we're going to reveal in today's class the basic tools for how to read time from a mystical perspective, so that, ladies and gentlemen, I've got good news for you. You will not have to wait for the newspaper in the morning to read the horoscopes to know what kind of day you're going to have. No, I'm joking. The horoscope's a bunch of nonsense. But we will teach you from a Jewish perspective what Judaism teaches us about how to discover the inherent, underlying, mystical heartbeat of the universe. Yes, Elaine. And part of this is exactly right. Part of it is about understanding the lunar calendar. One of the ways we know the energy in the world is by understanding the moon. Did anyone see the moon tonight? It's almost full. It's almost full. Tomorrow night is the full moon. Tonight is the 14th day of the month. And that's a supermoon? Unbelievable. I saw the moon this afternoon at about 3:30 when it was not yet dark, and it was huge in the sky. And part of Judaism's part of what we're going to learn tonight is about learning how to interpret the waxing and the waning of the moon and all these different things. So we're not going to become complete experts in this tonight, but we're going to get a glimpse into this and learn some basic skills for how to discover this and how to understand, how to learn what's the energy of the day. What's the energy of the day? Some of the great mystics, one of the great mystics was the Alter Rebbe. He was once locked up in a cell without a clock, and he was able to know what time of the day it was by the feeling of the spiritual vibrations in the world, by the spiritual energies of the world, right? So we're not necessarily going to reach that level of mastery tonight. We might, I can't guarantee we won't, but we will certainly learn a little bit about how to reveal and how to experience and see the meaning of time, the Kabbalah of time. So I want to start with a very famous story. There's a story in the Talmud. Once upon a time in a faraway land, that's not how it says it in the Talmud, I'm paraphrasing. Once upon a time in a faraway land, there was a king. And the king decided to one day leave the palace and dress up as a commoner and go out and see how the citizens of his kingdom were faring. And he walked through different neighborhoods and everything seemed fine until finally he showed up at in the Jewish neighborhood. And he saw it was a Saturday afternoon and he saw all the people celebrating a holiday. And he went looking through the windows and he saw a huge feast at somebody's table, and he knocked on the door and he asked if he could come in and participate. And they said, sure. And he came in and he had this delicious food, and it was the most wonderful thing. It was probably a cholent. It must have been a cholent, right? On a Shabbos afternoon. And it was the most delicious food he ever ate. And the next day, he sent a message to that family and he said, you didn't know this at the time, but I was the king and I ate your delicious food, your cholent, your stew, and I'd love to have the recipe. So they sent him the recipe and taught him exactly how to prepare this food. And when the king had the best chefs in the palace prepare it, and they tasted it, and it just wasn't it. And so he sent a message to them and he said, You've for sure not given me the full recipe because there's something missing in my cholent. And they were sent back a message and said, you're right, there is something missing. It's missing the most important spice. The most important spice is Shabbos. The most important spice is the Sabbath itself. You can make a cholent any day of the week, but if it's not Shabbos, if it doesn't have that special spice of Shabbos, it just won't taste the same. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, the Talmud summarizes with a statement that can be found on page 103 in our books. The Roman emperor asked Rabbi Yehoshua ben Hanania, why do the dishes of Shabbat produce such an enticing aroma? He answered, we have a special spice, and it is called Shabbat. We place it in the Shabbat dishes, and it gives off a fragrant aroma. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the Talmud is starting to tell us that what makes the food special is Shabbos itself. You can, I want to confess to something, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to Thanksgiving, our family is a little bit reformed. Instead of having the big feast and the turkey on Thursday, it's a lot of work to make a big meal for Thursday and for Shabbos. So Michal's mother would always make the turkey for Friday night. Right? Do it on Friday night, do it a day late. Is it such a big crime? So you did that as well. You're also reform. Yeah, you had the Chabad rabbis reform about Thanksgiving. Okay, but when it comes, so Thanksgiving, listen, maybe it's sacrilegious, maybe I'm missing something, but I think you can do it a day late. Especially if that's when your family's coming in or whatever it is, right? But let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. The Zohar, the Kabbalah teaches us that the mitzvahs on Pesach have the power of healing. You know what? On the first night of Pesach, it only works at that time. If you do it at the wrong time, it just doesn't have the power. See, Jewish holidays are not assigned a day. They intrinsically reflect the spiritual energy of that day. And this is a very important distinction. The secular calendar has assigned values to days. The Jewish calendar reflects and reveals to us the inherent spiritual power of the day. You can't do Passover a week early. It's just not going to work. Or a week late. It doesn't work. The powerful, magical potential and the matzah just is not there. And that's why Jewish calendar is understanding and living with this calendar is so important. By the way, this also explains why it's so important to light the Shabbat candles before sunset at the right time, because that's when the magic works. You do it at the wrong time, it's just not going to work. It's like eating a cholent on a Tuesday. It's just not going to have the spice called Shabbos. And every one of our, so this, in other words, there's a deep spiritual idea at work over here. Any questions or comments? Okay. So let's go on a little with the slide. Secular holidays have an assigned value. Jewish holidays have an inherent value. The Shabbat spice and the Shabbat, I'll tell you a story. I want to tell you a story. There was a very famous Rebbe in the Hasidic movement. His name was Rabbi Yisroel of Rizhin. Rabbi Yisroel of the town of Rizhin. He was one of the greatest of the Hasidic Rebbes, with tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands of pious Jews used to come and study from him and learn from him, be inspired by him and blessed by him. When he was a little boy already, he was known as an absolute genius. an absolute genius, a prodigy. In fact, whenever he studied something with his teacher, he had a private tutor. He was too smart to go to school. Whenever he studied something, he understood it right away. And he never had trouble his whole life understanding something until one day his teacher told him and was studying with him a passage in the Talmud. So here's the passage. Let me tell you the passage that they were studying that day. The Talmud presents a fascinating dilemma. If a person is lost in the wilderness and they lose track of time and they don't know which day of the week is Shabbat, they've lost track of when Shabbos is, what should they do? So there's two opinions. One opinion is, it's interesting. One opinion is they should designate 6 work days, and the 7th day should be your designated Shabbos. And then do another designated 6 work days, and then a designated Shabbos. Got it? In other words, so we still remember the idea of the Sabbath on the 7th day, designate 6 work days, then do a designated Shabbos, then another designated 6 work days, and keep on going. That's the first opinion. The second opinion is designate that day that you suddenly remember when is Shabbos, designate this day as Shabbos, and then have 6 designated work days, and then designate Shabbos, and then another 6 designated work days. In other words, one opinion is you start with the 6 work days and then you go to the Shabbos. The other one is start with the Shabbos and then do 6 designated work days. You understand?
Yeah.
Little Yisro of Rishon turns to his teacher and he says, I don't understand. His teacher was a little surprised, but he says it again. The little boy says, I still don't understand. Now his teacher's totally confused because this is the kid who never had trouble understanding anything, even the most complex ideas, and this is pretty simple. So he turns to the boy and says, what don't you understand? The boy says, I don't understand how it could be that a person doesn't know which day is Shabbos. He says, on Shabbos, the sky looks different. On Shabbos, the birds chirp differently. On Shabbos, the air smells different. How could a person not know which day is Shabbos? In other words, the great mystics, and this child went on to become one of the greatest spiritual people of his generation, have an inherent capacity to look beyond, and sometimes you play a sound frequency and some people can hear it and some people can't. Have you ever been in that position that some people could hear the sound but you couldn't hear it? Or you could hear it but others couldn't? We know that dogs can hear frequencies that humans can't hear. Dogs can smell aromas that humans can't smell. Just because you can't hear the sound doesn't mean it's not playing. And just because you can't smell the aroma doesn't mean it's not there. And just because we can't hear the sound of Shabbos or smell the air as different on Shabbos doesn't mean it's not different. So I'm sure some of the people here can feel and hear and the Shabbos air, but I can't usually. But the idea over here is that there's an inherent spiritual difference between Shabbos and the days of the week. Yes, Elena.
The time of Adam and Eve, it never moved. It's just like, we still have the same rhythm that was established there.
The seven,
Nobody ever forgot.
the 6 days of the week and Shabbos.
Yeah.
You know, the most fascinating thing all over the world in different cultures is everybody has a 7-day work week, a 7-day week. And one of the most fascinating things about 7-day weeks, is mathematically, it's a terrible number. It doesn't fit well with calendars. And more than that, the French, it's known that under Napoleon, the French and then the Russians tried the same thing, try to make a 10-day week, because they try to make a 10-day week to make it work with a metric system.
Yeah.
They try to make it work with a metric system. They try to create a metric system calendar, and it just could not work. And one of the fascinating things in Judaism is we have a 7-day week. We have a month that revolves around the moon. We have a year that revolves around the sun. We do fascinating things in order to link the moon and the sun together with leap years. We bring the weeks into months, and all these things together create a calendar. So the answer to your question, Elena, is you ask, is the Saturday that we call Shabbos the same one that God rested on? And the answer is unequivocally and absolutely yes. And the mystics can feel it in the Rabbi Yisrael of Rizhin wouldn't have understood your question. Well, that's the point, right? He just wouldn't have understood your question. And part of now, I heard they have a story in the book here. I'm going to read the story from the book, page 105. That Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz, he wrote a book called "I Love When That Happens," together with his son, Rabbi Mendel Schwartz. Did anyone ever here know Schwartzy? If you were from California, from Los Angeles, you would have known Schwartzy. Schwartzy was a legendary rabbi in California, Chabad rabbi. He passed away about 5 to 10 years ago, I don't remember. But Schwartzy was a character. And so he wrote a book, and he tells the story. He's a folksy kind of a guy. Says the doctor told me that an average of 5 people per day experience breakdowns and are brought to NPI. That was a hospital there. Few of them are Jewish. But he said, I've noticed that every single year around the Jewish holidays, the Jewish admittance goes up dramatically. And on one day each year, admittance spikes closer to 20 people, with 15 of them Jewish. Which day is that, I asked. The doctor said Yom Kippur. And here's the punchline, says Schwartzy. Each year when admittance to NPI went up on Yom Kippur, it was in the Hebrew calendar date, the 10th day of Tishrei, not a consistent day on the secular calendar. The Jews who were brought in on Yom Kippur didn't even know it was on Yom Kippur. Something happens on Yom Kippur. I'll tell you, I see it every year. I see every year on Yom Kippur, Jews in New Canaan, that if you ask them, why are you in synagogue? They'll tell you, we have no idea. Or they tell you, right? People don't know why they're coming. They don't know this, but something stirs in the Jewish heart. There's a great Yiddish writer. His name was Rabbi Yom Tov Ehrlich. He was a poet, and he composed beautiful songs. I'm going to share something else in a second. I think I might have it up on the screen already. Otherwise, I'll find it. Nope, let's go. Yom Tov Ehrlich, Yom Kippur song. We're going to play the Yom Tov Ehrlich Yom Kippur song. Yom Tov Ehrlich was a Yiddish poet, and he wrote a song about Yom Kippur, about how people are stirred on Yom Kippur in surprising ways. This song is about a Soviet naval captain who gets stirred on Yom Kippur. They have it in the book on page 104 in English. Instead of just reading it, I figured let's find someone online who sings it. It's not necessarily... I'll tell you the truth. You look over here on the screen, you see there's this one and there's this one. This one's Avram Fried. He sings it better. But this one has subtitles. So we're going to go with the one that has subtitles. He also sings very nicely. The Avram Fried one's a little better, but this one has subtitles. You with me? Okay, let's do it.
Limited time, receive a $100 MasterCard reward card with every in-store mattress purchase of $1,500 or more. Or explore our flexible financing options.
Skip the ad. I just want you to see the ad. I'm joking.
Die zin is vergangen, a rop in a vlam, auf Chwaljes die Strahlen zegossen. Es fuhrt a gepanzerte Schiff auf den Jam, mit russische Kriegsmatrosen. Der Schiffskapitän steht beim Spitz auf dem Deck und halt a Lornette, a kleine. Und plötzlich der seht a herrlichen Breg und auf einmal steht gut a Schöne. Odessa heißt die Stadt, ihre Lampen beim Port glanzen wie Diamond von Weiten. Und plötzlich der Härter an Nigen von dort, von alte vergessene Zeiten. Es der Mann dem im Nigen sich reines Sassach von Jahren mit viel Vergnügen. Nicht Beethoven, Mozart, nicht Wagner, nicht Bach, es ist etwas aneinander mit Nigen. Und plötzlich der seht es geht bei der Wand, an altitschke Frau eingebeugen. A kleine Gepäckele unter den Hand, a Tichel a rüber die Augen. Mutter sucht an Nigen nicht her, und ich kenn mich kein Ort nicht gefunden. Es zieht mir die Herz und es bringt sich her, ich fühl, als ich riesig von Sinnen. Sucht ihm die Alter, dein Panem sucht aus, als du bist a Jid und Ribbe. Ist bei dir Hand, doch die Bänke nicht groß, weil Hand ist die Nacht von Yom Kippur. Die Nacht von Yom Kippur geht a Geschrei, ich seh meine kindrische Jorn. In dus ist der Nigen doch von Kohl mit drei, es lebt mir alt in sie Korn. A Dank sucht die Alte, der was hat ihr geschickt, Punkt in der Zeit, helft der Tomit. Man hat bei uns alle bald viel uns verschickt, nicht da, wer soll zugehen zum Moment. A kleine Geschilchel, es brennen vor Licht, a Talis hat man einzig getrunken. Trägt zu zum Sede sein blassen Gesicht, in Häuptun heuer zu sagen. Menschen, sie weiß dir, was ist geschehen da, schreckliche, heilige Sachen. Zu nehmen am Menschen und ein halbes Show in a so glücklich zu machen. Hier ich hab ein gefunden, mein Glück, man hat mir von Sumpf aufgehoben. Einigen gesucht und gefunden zurück, mein alte verlorenem Glauben. Einigen gesucht und gefunden zurück, mein alte verlorenem Glauben.
So let me ask you a question. Beautiful, right? Now, you thought he didn't do the Yiddish. It's Yiddish. Wait, how about them? So,
Die Sinn ist
pardon?
The melody.
The melody is a Russian tune. What's the Russian word? What's the Russian tune? Can you do me a favor, please? I love it when I hear these things. Can you do me a favor, please? Can you send me send me a video of that? Send me a link to a Russian song like that. Yeah, I need it. So that's very interesting because Yom Tov Erlich, the author or the composer of the song and of this poem, was a traditional Orthodox Jew trapped behind the Soviet Union. He wasn't able to leave until the late 50s or early 60s. And he was living a traditional life. He landed up in Samarkand, actually, where he was living in that world where he, during the war, and I think even after the war, until he was able to leave, and composed these like folk songs, probably based on Russian songs, which is, but in a beautiful Yiddish, and he put it together. And, you know, he was creative, but only so creative. But I'd love to hear the Russian original. That would be great. So that's fantastic. I really like it. So that's your homework, Elena, to send that to me. Anyway, but let me ask you a question. This captain on the ship, did he hear a song? Did he hear anyone singing? He heard a song. That's the point of the story, right? So he didn't actually hear music on the ground. There was a song going on inside of him. Something was happening and he couldn't figure out what it was. And he goes off the boat searching for something. And it turns out that he didn't even realize that what he was searching for was that he was stirred because it was Yom Kippur. Now, this is a fictitious story, but it's a true story. Right? A true story doesn't mean that it actually happened. A true story means that it contains a truth. Well, there's two types of true stories. There's the ones that actually happened. Sometimes fiction is more true than the truth, right? Sometimes fiction reveals truths. And the idea over here is that sometimes the soul is stirred and we don't even know why. And we found out afterwards there was that there was something going on and we didn't even realize it. And in this case, the point of the song is that Yom Kippur was happening and he didn't realize it. But then he discovered that that's actually what was really happening in the boat. And we find similar things, by the way, in the Torah. Let me share my screen. What is this? What is going on over here? One second. Something's wrong with the PowerPoint, but let me share it anyway. Maybe it will get fixed when I share it. Here we go. So, Yom Kippur, when Yom Kippur is in the air, people find it stirs the soul and awakens the heart. There's a fascinating thing in the Torah. We read about it in the Torah a few weeks ago on Shabbos. A few angels came to visit Abraham. And remember what he fed them? Matzahs. And then they go to Lot, and he's also feeding them matzahs. So the commentaries ask, why was Abraham feeding the matzahs? And the answer is, if you do the math, you'll see it was Passover. But the thing is, Passover hadn't happened yet. So why was Abraham feeding them matzahs? Because the great mystics can tap into the spiritual energy of the day. Abraham knew intuitively that Passover is a day that's associated with matzah. Let's read inside, page 106. Abraham wasn't celebrating an event in the future. He was tapping into a spiritual energy of freedom that was and always is present at that time of the year. The energy of liberation is encoded into the composition of the annual cycle. Somebody already sent me the Russian song, so I think we're ahead of the game. I think so. Thank you, Svetlana.
This is English muffin.
Tom, which is a look and which
I'm guessing that's what Svetlana sent me.
Granny, look, Granny. I mean, they should be teaching you this in school.
Come on.
Two-step breakfast.
I think it's the same thing. Okay. I'm not sure. For even Abraham didn't just celebrate Passover. He didn't just serve matzahs. He intuitively understood that it was the 15th of Nisan, which is the day of freedom that was and always is present at that time of the year. The energy of liberation is encoded into the composition of the annual cycle. So in other words, there's a whole spiritual thing happening. The Exodus happened. The 15th of Nisan is intrinsically holy. And because the 15th of Nisan is inherently holy, therefore the Exodus happened on that day. Freedom, it's not that because freedom happened on that day, so we celebrate freedom. There wasn't another day of the year that it could have happened. It had to happen on that day because that's the day when the energy of freedom is in the world. You understand? There's a concept in Hebrew, they say, Magalgalin Schusla Yom Zakai. It happened to happen on its worthy day. Page 108, Wells in Time. Each festival marks a point in our journey through time at which our Heavenly Father supplied us with the resources that nurture our spiritual lives. On Passover, we were granted the gift of freedom. On Shavuot, God gave us his Torah, our charter as his kingdom of priests and a holy people. Rosh Hashanah is the day on which God first became king. On Yom Kippur, God granted us the gift of Teshuvah, the capacity to rectify and transform a deficient past. Hanukkah marks the salvation of the Jewish soul, the triumph of light and purity over darkness and adulteration. The miracle of Purim, the salvation of the Jewish body. And so with all the festivals and special dates and periods on our calendar, they're not random, but each day has its own spiritual energy. Any questions or comments? No. Okay, so I'm going to show another video. In other words, weekdays are inherently different to Shabbos. We spoke about this already last week a bit. It's our job during the week to elevate the material world. That's why our souls descended down into this world in order to engage with the material world and bring more sanctity, spirituality, warmth, and light into a material world, as we said last week, to create and to form a home for Hashem, for God, a place where God can feel at home in the physical world. That's what our mission is in this world. And we do that 6 days a week. On Shabbos, we do very little. On Shabbos, we don't engage with the physical world very much. We turn everything off. We turn off our devices. We don't use the electricity, and we don't venture far from our homes. And we keep things we don't cook. We keep things very, very simple on Shabbos. On Shabbos, we stop doing. Somebody once said, on Shabbos, we go from human doing to human being. We become human beings. We stop doing and we pause and reflect on why we are here. What's the value of it all? What's the meaning of it all? During the week, the energy is one in which we have to elevate the mundane. On Shabbos, the world is imbued with godly presence. And so we need to tap into that, the presence of God, and therefore the meaning of all things. And tap into that energy, which gives us the power then on a Sunday to have the energy we need to properly fulfill our role in the world. As we learned before, we read Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Each event revealed a spiritual wellspring, a source of energy that we can access again and again. As we go through the calendar, we are not only commemorating anniversaries, we are actually re-experiencing energies that are once again available and accessible in the world. And so the Jewish mystic, the Kabbalist, understands we have to tap into the meaning of the day. What's the energy of the day? And as we tap into the energy of the day, we start realizing that every day has an energy. And there's no such thing as, oh, it's just another day. Or so what if I didn't do anything productive this day? Because every day has a power, and we have to actively, proactively use every moment that we are given by God for the potential that that moment has. I was talking to someone today, he says, this is a lot of pressure, right? I want to sometimes just sit back and relax. But knowing this, I feel a lot of pressure to use every moment to the fullest. I said, good. That's exactly the point.
I found this one.
Oh, Elena found the song. Let's hear.
Let's send it to you.
Okay, well, let me see over here. Another one. I'm sure it's the same one Svetlana sent. I'm sure it's the same one. I'm sure it's the same one.
Bear with me.
It's similar. I think it's the same one. Okay. Beautiful.
Rabbi, can't you
Thanks,
think of,
Huh?
Rabbi, can't you think of relaxing as maybe it is, you really are doing something?
Okay,
You're
so that is
nourishing
true.
yourself?
That is true. That is true. Sometimes what we have to do is relax. We're not against relaxation. We're not against. Sometimes it's important to take a break. Taking a break can be very important. If it's an intentional decision that I need to take a break in order to recharge, especially on Shabbos, and it's important, whenever it is, it's important. We need to sleep at night. God created us in a way that we need to sleep. So taking a break and resting is a very important thing if it's intentional. Procrastinating is usually not a great idea. I think that's what he was referring to. And I think that's what you're saying, Phyllis. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Yes, Elaine.
We are also an energy system, so when we tune into that, it helps us to use our own energy. Even when you talk about rest, what do we do with our energy?
Absolutely. Well said.
Our focus of our own energy increases.
That's great. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Video. This is, a lot in this video is the Lubavitcher Rebbe talking about to groups of people about the energies of a particular day and a particular time, and seeing as a great mystic, recognizing, I'm going to get rid of the, as a great mystic, sort of revealing to people the power of a day and the importance of tapping into the unique energies of those particular days. And in his teachings, the Rebbe really taught us a lot about how to discover what the unique energy of a day is. And that's what we're going to focus on for the most of the rest of the class. We're going to watch the Rebbe doing it in front of us. We're going to watch the Rebbe actually showing people how to tap into the energy of a day and know what the unique energies of every day are.
Learning to tell time is an early milestone, but the Rebbe revealed that beyond telling the time, we need to find out what time itself has to tell us. Let me explain. Creation is a constant act. At every moment, God energizes every feature of existence into being. Time, too, is a creation. Each of its segments is created with a unique divine energy and purpose. But how can we identify the special energy of any given moment? The Rebbe often explained it like this at children's rallies. God is our commander-in-chief. We're his soldiers, and our mission is to push back darkness with holiness and kindness. And besides the overall mission, there's also the order of the day, a specific instruction meant for today.
Und sicher da an Oplernung, was gibt der Kommandier-in-Chief zu jeder von seinen Soldiers, wie mir selbst auch sichert, wie sie eingeführt in der Armee da, als sie da in Zugabe zu dem Order und zu der Hanhoges und Anweisungen, wo der Armee bekommt, von Zeit zu Zeit, in order of the day.
That idea opens up a bigger point. Time isn't just neutral background. Each segment carries its own message and purpose. And when you start paying attention, you notice that there are several layers that shape what a given moment is about. Day, week, month, and special dates, all working together to define what this moment is asking from us. Day. The Torah describes each of the 6 days of creation, followed by Shabbat. Those 7 themes are repeated each week. Take Wednesday, for example.
Gefinden mir sich Easter bei jedem Horvi in der 4. Tag von Woche, was so damals sagt man, der Rebischter hat beschaffen, es hamoir ha-Godel, die Sohn, ves hamoir ha-Koton, die Levone.
Wednesday's energy is associated with creating and sharing light. Week. Each Shabbat, a different Torah portion is read, and every portion has 7 sections, corresponding to the 7 days of the week.
Aber soll leben mit der Zeit und Masbir gewähren hat das Menschen mit der Chelik von Parshas HaShavua, wo sie in der Parsha Gufe verbunden mit dem Tag.
Month. 12 months, 12 themes. To find the theme, check the month's name and its significant dates. For example, Nisan means miraculous, and it contains the holiday of Passover.
Ist der Zeit im Jahr, wenn mit der Mond jeder nach dem, und dämmelt in der maseldicke Zeit, was mir gibt im speziellen Kirches auf Durchführen das Befehl, ist das verbunden mit Zmanche und Seno.
Moreover, each month is split into a number of days, and numbers are deeply meaningful. For example, the number 18 spells Chai, life.
Es kommt ein Tag, was ist der Chai. In Chedesh, der Mond ist noch einmal auf der Linie von Lebendigkeit.
Special dates. The Jewish calendar has special dates, biblical, historical, or evolved by custom. Each reveals something profound about the time in which the event is set.
Als ich gewähne, a jemil werde es a schon Liefnisse. Und a jemil werde es muss noch sein Liefnisse. Und mehrere Jahren Liefnisse. Apal Pikena, Sekunde, selber Tag, im selben Chedesh. Nur miteinander Jahr, ist a demut einander Linien, einander erwiderte.
When you start paying attention to these patterns, time stops feeling random. You begin to notice that each day comes with its own built-in message and opportunity. It's not just about watching the clock. It's about asking, what does this moment want from me? Sometimes it's to help someone. Sometimes it's to learn something. Sometimes it's to slow down. Each day comes with its own assignment. It's a different kind of telling time, listening for what the day is asking.
Any questions or comments? So, ladies and gentlemen, back to the PowerPoint again, actually. So the first thing we see in the video from the Rebbe is the importance of recognizing time. And we're going to talk in a moment about how one of the ways we can discover time and the unique energy of a particular day is by studying the weekly Torah portion of that week. And specifically, the way it corresponds to the 7 aliyahs, the 7 sub-portions of the Torah portion, how they correspond to the 7 days of the week. And there's other traditional things that people study every day. And now I'm just going to make a plug for a special program. One of the ways to know the order of the day is, we said, by studying what's called chitas. which is the Chumash, the Tanya, and the Tehillim of the day. Chitas is an acronym for Chumash, Tanya, Tehillim. Chumash is Torah portions. And there's a wonderful magazine called Chayenu. Let me see if I have one over here. You want to get it first, Logan? The little magazine, we're on a campaign. My friend actually runs this organization called Chayenu, and they're on a campaign right now to increase subscribers this week. And there's a 50% discount. It's the biggest discount I've ever done, and it's going to end in a few days. So if you want to get it, Dope does this himself every day. You subscribe to this magazine. It gets sent, it's in English, it's got Hebrew and English. It gets sent to you in the mail, and you can, every single week, you get another one of these things. And it's got a reading for Sunday, it's got readings for Monday, readings for Tuesday, and it reveals the especially the Torah portion, but the daily Tehillim, the daily Psalms, reveal to us the energy of the day. So knowing the Torah portion, know which day, is one of the ways to tap in to this thing. So there happens to be a 50% sale. If you want to take a look at this booklet, you can afterwards. You'll see it's more than just a way of knowing the day, because it's a serious commitment of study. But for people that are interested in really studying at home in a very serious way and supercharging your Torah learning, this is a slow way. Could you imagine studying the whole Torah in 1 year? It's very doable, actually. It's much easier than you think. So you read it by the days of the week, the aliyahs. It's too small for you. They have an app as well. But that's a wonderful thing, and it's a little plug for a wonderful program, and it's something that everybody can benefit from in a very spiritual way. It brings all kinds of blessings in our lives. So that's the first thing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look at the table in our books on page 110. Because now we're going to use JLI has put together a little key over here with basic tools on trying to figure out what the unique spiritual energies of the week are. So, firstly, you will notice that on the page 110 in our books, there's a list of the days of the week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. You see that on the left side. Now, the Kabbalists teach that every day of the week is reflective of one of the divine attributes of God. Kabbalah teaches that God has 10 attributes. 3 are intellectual and 7 are emotional. And the 7 emotional attributes are, in our chart from top to bottom, in the second column, the Sephirah is the attribute. Sephirah, the 7 emotional attributes by which God created the world and which pulsate through the world are Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchut, which correspond to the kindness of God. Kindness is one thing, but on the other hand, you also need to have boundaries and restrictions, and that's Gevurah, strength. Then you need the beautiful. Ultimately, we want to find the beautiful balance between kindness and discipline, between kindness, between love and boundaries. You know, in relationships, we need love and we need boundaries, but we need to find the beautiful balance between the two. That's Tiferet, harmony, beauty. Then comes Wednesday, which reflects Netzach, victory. Then Thursday is Hod, which means over here they say splendor, but it's also gratitude and humility. And finally, Yesod, foundation, and a Malchut, royalty, is the last one. You see that? And each one of these attributes pulsates through the universe every day of the week, all of them. God conducts the world with all these emotional attributes. But on each day of the week, a different one of them is more dominant. So what day of the week is it, ladies and gentlemen? It's a trick question. It was Wednesday. It's not Wednesday anymore. When the sun set today, we moved into the energy of Thursday. So the Kabbalists know that tonight is the 5th night of the week. And the energy in the week tonight, on a Thursday, and every Thursday, but now we are in Hod energy. And Hod is about recognizing, they say the service of the day is recognizing God's splendor by focusing on the greatness of his creations. This leads one to humility and gratitude and praise of God. So the energy of the 5th night of the week, from tonight and tomorrow, the energy is humility and gratitude. Humility and gratitude. Okay, you with me? But that's not enough. We have to, maybe that's why Thanksgiving is on a Thursday. Now we know. Now we know. Now we know. And ladies and gentlemen, tonight we started off the class, people were talking about the full moon. And they said how bright the moon is. If you look at the rest, at the next page, on page 111, we know that the Jewish people are compared to the moon. The very first mitzvah that we got was about the moon. That our calendar should be synchronized and based on the moon. If you look at day 15, the full moon represents the peak of our spiritual achievement, peak spiritual energy. We're almost there. By the 14th, the moon is still building up. So the building up moon means we're building up to a peak. So when you talk about full moon of gratitude, we're talking about serious gratitude, full moon gratitude, full splendor of gratitude. You with me? So it's in the moon, and the moon also represents humility, by the way, because the moon is all its light comes from the sun. It's a reflective light. So full humility, because a Thursday with a full moon, it's a very interesting concept. And then which month are we in? We're in the month of Kislev, the 3rd month of the year. So if you turn to page 113, it goes Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. It's the 3rd month of the year. Kislev, the month that we're in right now, is the month of Hanukkah, which is the festival of lights. And it centers around the theme of the Torah's light. This is the month of light, because Hanukkah is about the triumph of light over darkness. This is underscored by the 19th of Kislev, which is a great Hasidic holiday on which we celebrate the revelation of the deepest secrets of Torah, the teachings of Hasidus. So we see mystical energy is powerful in the month of Kislev, and it's about light and tapping into light and tapping into Torah, which brings light. So light with humility, almost like the moon, right? As opposed to the sun, which is not such a humble light. The moon's light is a reflective light. So it's an energy of a reflective light of humility in the world for the next 24 hours. But that's not all. There's more. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to look at the Torah portion. Which week are we in? We're in the week of Vayishlach, which is the last one on page 114. Now, this Torah portion is an interesting week. It tells the story of Jacob's encounter with Esau, his brother, which was one of the most perilous moments in history, because it was one of the most important confrontations. And Jacob came out on top. That was last 2-3 weeks ago. This week is when Jacob's coming back after running away to Haran and establishing 12 tribes. And he comes back and he meets his brother for one last time. And his brother's coming towards him with 400 men ready to cause to fight. But Jacob somehow changes the energy around and the two brothers embrace. And then they say goodbye, never to see each other again. But somehow or another he diffuses Esau. Not that I know of. And then the Torah goes on to tell us that horrible story of the rape of Dinah and the massacre of the people of Shechem. And Jacob, in this week's portion earlier, is given the name Israel, which Israel means he struggles with man and with God and he succeeds, and with angels and he succeeds. And then we read about the progeny of Esau. So on the 5th day of the week, so let's see the energy. So I'm going to pull out our nifty little Chayenu magazine. I haven't read tomorrow's Torah reading portion yet, because I only read today yet, because tomorrow's is Thursday. And it says over here that tomorrow, Yaakov's daughter Dinah, we have the story of Yaakov, Jacob's story, Dinah, going out and getting abducted and raped, and her brothers avenging her death. And her father's being quite angry with the brothers for the way they went about avenging her death. Now, was that a humble incident? Not really. So it's an interesting thing. We have different convergences happening over here. We have the story of these brothers acting quite violently in protection of their sister, and their father not being so happy with it. But it's happening on a Thursday, which is the day of humility, at a time of a full moon. So we have to really explore and think in our head, well, how does this all mean? What does this all mean? Put it together. That's the energy of the day. Tonight's also the 14th night of the month of Kislev. In Chabad, that's a very significant day, because it's the day that the Rebbe and his wife got married. And the Rebbe once, which is itself something we have to think about. In other words, what is the energy of a day like that? And why would it happen on this night? And how does it all come together? So the mystics are going to try to explore these ideas and try to understand what's all this telling us? What's the message from this? What's the message from these incidents? You with me? Anyone have any ideas? How do we put it all together? Elaine, you can do this. You're a mystic.
Never one way. The human being, we're not gods. So there's a complexity to our energies. Like we go this morning. I'm not sure what brings them
What brings it all together?
together. That's where the balance is putting up. If we try to find that the middle road to reach it, it's good.
Absolutely. You're trying to work it out. You're still struggling to work it out. I understand and I agree with you. But this is the way we learn how every day has its energy, and it can be revealed to us. It's not always obvious, but we know that especially the big days, Shabbos and the holidays, have incredible spiritual power, and that no 2 days are alike. And each day's opportunities are there. And we have to wake up in the morning and make sure to seize the day and use each day to its fullest. It says about Abraham, when he was an old man, it says, Avraham Zakein, and Abraham was old, Bo Bayamim, he came on in days. And the commentaries explain, it means he came with his days. He brought every day with him. He never had a wasted day. He used every day to the fullest. And so today, the main lesson of today in the Kabbalah of time is the importance of using every day to the fullest and maximizing the spiritual potential of the day. Sometimes we'll be able to see it in the Torah portion. Sometimes it's harder. Sometimes, but very often and every day, there is that opportunity there. And by tapping into the spiritual power, living every day to the fullest is really the main message that we're trying to convey over here. Then there are days that are especially important for each of us individually, like our birthdays. Birthdays, especially the Jewish birthday. The Jewish birthday is, you have to look on a calendar, and figure out, put into Google the day you were born in a secular calendar and ask it for the Jewish calendar, the Jewish date, and it will tell you your Jewish birthday. And Jewish birthdays reflect are very important spiritual days for us. It's like a personal Rosh Hashanah with very spiritual energy. The Lubavitcher Rebbe explains, page 121 in our books, the joy and the offering of praise and thanks to God on the birthday of every individual Jew is not only in connection to the original event of their birth, which is commemorated on this day, but also in connection to the birth that takes place on this very day itself, when their vitality is once again drawn down. It's a rebirth every year, a new flow of life force for the entire year ahead. And therefore the Rebbe instituted and encouraged people to do all kinds of spiritual things on their Jewish birthdays to mark the spiritual energy that is available on those days of the week. Okay, yes, Elaine.
To live in the past and in the future. We're worried about analyze the past and we're thinking about the future. And we don't squeeze the moment. And I think that Judaism is teaching us that this day is precious. Let's be present today.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Very well said. Very well said. The importance of living and a lot of people say live in the present and be present, which is true. But part of that, and a big part of that, and what we're saying over here, is to recognize that this day, I'll tell you a story. I'm going to end with a story. I want to end with a story. I think we told it in our last course. Or maybe we didn't. Maybe it was this course. Maybe it was this morning. A good story is always worth repeating. There was a great, I'll tell you, it's a good promotion for our next course. Our next course is going to be a very interesting course. It's going to start in February. Our next course is going to be a combination of Jewish wisdom and history. Fascinating questions that were posed to the rabbis in different eras, and what we can learn about the history of the time, as well as the advice that the rabbis gave based on the wisdom of the Torah for that time. And you see a thing like that in this particular story. Hundreds of years ago, there was a Jew who was captured and made to work as a slave. And he wrote a letter to one of the leading rabbis of his time, whose name was the Radvaz. That's his acronym, Rabbi David ben something, the Radvaz. And he said, Rabbi, I have a question for you. He says, my master has offered me to give me 1 day a year when I can go free. Which day of the year do you recommend? And now, listening to today's class, what would you answer? Would you pick a Shabbos? Would you say Yom Kippur? Would you say Passover? Would you say Hanukkah? Would you say his birthday? Which day would you recommend? So do you know what the Radvaz answered? The Radvaz wrote back and he said, take the first opportunity. The very first day you can. Don't, because every day is ripe and pregnant with spiritual opportunity. And so your first opportunity to go out there and live free as a Jew, take it and maximize that day to the most as a thing. When I was a child in school, we had a teacher, our principal actually. I'll tell you a funny story. He would tell us something every day, and I didn't know how many times my children had heard the story but Menachem, my son, is studying in South Africa this year, and he told me that a few weeks ago, he met my principal at a Kiddush. And he said, oh, you're Rabbi Chazdan. He says, yes, I've heard so much about you from my father. So Rabbi Chazdan said, well, what did you hear? He says, I heard from in your name. And he would always tell it to us. He would say, today is the first day of the rest of your life. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Make it happen. Right? Seize the moment. This is the day that is pregnant with the most unbelievable. And if we live that way every day, then recognize that. And there's no, oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or, you know, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right away. That's the lesson from thinking this way. And that adds a tremendous amount of energy, spirituality, and meaning to our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us here tonight for the fourth lesson of the Kabbalah of Meaning. And we look forward to seeing you next week for lesson 5. Lesson 5 is meaning in the unchosen. How do we find meaning in other elements? Right? It's the heading for next week is meaning in the unchosen. Some things are clearly meaningful, but what if everything is? Explore a vision of life where every event and circumstance catalyzes growth and leads to greater purpose. Even the things that sort of happen to us are actually very meaningful as well. And that's next week. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. Have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing everybody soon. Any last questions or comments from the people at home?
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.